Welcome to Dialogue. The much anticipated Chancay Port has officially commenced operations in Peru. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Peruvian counterpart Dina Boluarte inaugurated South America's largest and most modern port. Built by a Chinese company, Chancay Port is set to boost trade by cutting shipping time between Peru and Asia by more than 10 days. Why was Chancay chosen to launch this mega project, and what will this port bring to the region when fully operational? And how does this port construction define the cooperation between China and Latin American countries? Join us for our discussion today, live from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo. Joining me today are Marco Carrasco, Professor of Development and East Asian Studies of the National University of San Marcos, and Najib Kahad, a member of the Board of Directors of Corporation Kahad Vakari, SA, and Professor John Gong, University of International Business and Economics, and later by Jorge Heine, former Chilean ambassador to China. Welcome to Dialogue. I will start with Professor Marco Carrasco. For those who are not following the latest development closely, tell us more about this port, Chancay Port. Why is it necessary? What's the consideration of building such a mega project?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. Yes, indeed. The Chancay Megaport is a very important project for Peru because it gives Peru a very important place among trade in Latin America. So with this port, actually, Peru has surpassed Chile in terms of capacity. So it's very important for us in different levels. In addition to that, the $3.5 billion that are expected to be invested for the construction of this port until its completion is something that has not been seen before in Peru economy. So also the size of this investment, and also the possibility of the creation of so many jobs as well and employment in the north of Lima is something very relevant for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, Najib, if you look at this public response to the operation of the port, what's the response from the public as well as from the, say, business community here?
Okay, also, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm really glad. Well, let's see, in a business point of view, this port is gonna open a lot of possibilities for the interchange from Peru and China. And well, not also from Peru and China, also for the countries nearby in South America and East Asia, right? And also directly to Peru, it's gonna give more than 8,000 direct jobs in the port of Chancay. And a part of that, it's gonna give thousands of indirect jobs from Peruvians that they're gonna be manufacturers, agriculture producers, and more groups in our country. So it's gonna impact a lot in our economy. And like I said, not only Peruvian economy, but also Chile, Colombia, every South American, and also especially Brazil, which is gonna invest in our railway to connect the Chancay port to Brazil. So it's gonna be really big for our South American community.
Mm-hmm. John, from the Chinese point of view, I mean, how important is the operation of the port to the Chinese business, in particular for those companies and entities, with a close cooperation with countries in the region, in particular with Peru and the regional neighbors, and also probably between this region and Asia too?
Well, I think from China's perspective, this connectivity affords shipping directly from China into Peru. Peru finally has an important port on its Pacific coast, which greatly shortens the transportation route to Asia, not just to China, but also to other trading powerhouses in Asia, for example, including South Korea, Japan, Singapore, all these countries, they're all benefiting from this. Previously, shipments have to use smaller ships to ship them to port in Mexico or Long Beach, California, in the United States, which takes longer time and it's more costly. I think I was told that they'd be able to cut short a total shipping time by, I think, more than 10 days. So that's quite significant from a maritime transportation point of view. And I think, not only countries in Asia benefiting from this, as the previous panelists have just said, the surrounding countries of Peru are also benefiting from it, including Colombia, Brazil, Chile. I think that the fact that Peru now has a mega port really opens a range of opportunities. It sets the stage for accelerate development. We all know that a developing country needs to take off, and it needs to take off based on a outward-oriented economy, and this is totally impossible without a major port. Our experiences here in China proves the success of this kind of a model, where you have a major port followed by industrial parks and processing, industrial parks, free trade zones surrounding the port. We have numerous examples in China to illustrate the success of this kind of a model. So obviously it's a proven and tested. So I would expect that Peru will benefit immensely from this. It's more than just some jobs created related to the port, but also I would expect foreign direct investment will follow, and this leads to a whole range of opportunities into the future. So I think from that perspective, this is a very significant development. I think the $3.6 billion is well spent. And I think the fact that this thing was started, it finished within 3 years, about 3 years. It's unheard of. It's a spectacular achievement in my view. It's such a major project involving $3.6 billion can be completed from the time it breaks ground to total completion. We have to keep in mind that when President Xi and the Peruvian president sat there to do the inauguration, President Xi said, "Open the port." And that what it means is that the port is in operation right now. There was actually a ship, anchoring at the port. So Peru joined the Belt and Road Initiative only in 2019, and 4 years away from that time, you have a mega port in operation. I mean, I think this tells the Chinese speed, the Chinese engineering prowess, the efficiency of getting things done. I think this is it says everything. It talks about every aspect of the great engineering prowess of we Chinese companies building infrastructures. Yeah. This is the perfect example of that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the speed, probably it also, speaks something of this strong consensus in terms of having more trade and facilitating more trade in the future. Ambassador Heine, welcome to the show. So I want to have your views on how do you look at the operation of the port and how important is it to Peru and to, let's say, trade between the two regions and of course, regional economies here?
Yes, let me underscore that I think the port of Chancay is an extremely important development. The rise that we have seen in trade between China and Latin America in the course of the new century is extraordinary. Trade between China and Latin America in 2000 was around $12 billion. In 2023, it was $485 billion. So an incredible increase. And it seems to me that this port will facilitate this trade even more. For South America today, the main trading partner is not the United States, it's not Europe, it is China for South America as a whole, including, of course, Peru, Chile, Brazil, Uruguay. So I would like to underscore that this is a very important development. I look forward to its full expansion. The fact that it is a deep water port means that the biggest ships in the world, up to 18,000 containers, I think they can carry, will be able to access it. So it should lower costs for shipments to China. I think I'm told it will cut travel time between Chancay and Shanghai by about 10 days, which is obviously very significant. So there are all sorts of reasons to welcome this as a major development in relations between South America and China.
So, Ambassador, is also kind of a diversification, let's say, in that sense, more trade with Asian countries, including China. At the same time, of course, maintaining strong relationship with the US, with the European countries. Obviously, that's a strong boost to Peru and regional neighbors here.
Of course, absolutely. It's very important for the region as a whole. But let me also, I'm from Chile, as you know. But let me underscore that I take my hat off to the initiative of Peru in bringing this port to fruition. This is the third time also that Peru hosts the APEC summit. Peru, like Chile, has also a free trade agreement with China, and it looks at the Asia Pacific as its main market. It has been very persistent in doing that, and part of the important economic growth and economic success that we have seen in Peru in the course of this century is due to the fact that it has targeted Asia as its main market. Some people say that we are living in the Asian century, and both my own country and Peru have realized how important that is and have targeted Asia as a very significant market. In Shanghai, it seems to me, is a very good expression of that.
Professor Marco Carrasco, of course, a lot of expectation, obviously, with the port in operation. We are going to see easier trade and investment between at least the two countries, of course, the two regions. Probably more, say, products and services will also go back and forth between the two sides. So, tell us more about it. What kind of products, what kind of, let's say, export from Peru to China or in vice versa?
Yes, for sure. Actually, this port gives us this opportunity to open to new types of trade, new types of products, and that's something that actually we want to push beyond, the common products that we export. So, for instance, in that case, the e-commerce platforms have played a very important role right now. I think Peru can take advantage of that, and of course, we want to diversify our matrix. We want to keep going, moving forward also in agricultural products as well. For instance, the blueberries. When the free trade agreement was signed, between Peru and China in 2009, the blueberries market was not that developed in Peru. So now we have developed, this market and many others which are related, and we can foster our trade, having this in mind. It's very important actually for us to diversify and to try to move forward to more manufactured products, and also to take advantage of these Chinese e-commerce platforms in order, to promote this trade. Something that I would like to remark as well is that as Peruvians, we want to be very pragmatic. I mean, we are open to investment as China. And in that sense, the Chancay project, when it was initially proposed, we were looking for certain investors, different investors, also not from China, but actually, for instance, for the US. And it was China, indeed, the one who see the possibility to invest, in this port and to develop it as a mega port. That is something we need to value, as it was previously mentioned. Just few years after Peru signed this memorandum of understanding, to be considered part of the Belt and Road Initiative, is very significant that we right now have this type of mega project just going on. It's a way to say, that it's not only a discourse of free trade and so, but it's actually taken to reality. That is very key for us. That is very important. And also for our regional partners as well.
Professor, of course, we know that during the President Xi Jinping's visit to Peru, state visit there, and the two sides signed the documents agreeing to upgrade their FTA, free trade agreement. Tell us more about this upgrading. What does it mean to both countries? I know in the joint statement, both sides said that they are committed to multilateral trading system, centered on World Trade Organization. Obviously, we do see a strong determination from both sides to do more trade, more free trade at least between them, and also a push for global, like a multilateral trading system here.
Yes, sure. Actually, we're expecting this update of the free trade agreement. Back, 15 years ago, it was not. These trade platforms, these e-commerce platforms were not that developed. So it was very important to include these kind of amendments in order to try to foster these possibilities as well. For instance, right now it's very important, all over the world, the trade that is being carried by platforms like Taobao, for instance, or like Yingdong as well from China, among many others. So, to have this possibility to include this type of products as well, in a way to foster these new developments is very key, is of key importance. Also, the push to move forward towards some green or environmentally friendly products is also very important for us. I think that should be fostered, all over the world. But unfortunately, of course, there are some leaders that not necessarily support this kind of moving forward in this type of products. So as long as we have this type of agreements, in what is very good for us, what is very good for the environment, I think we can very push and move forward. There's also, let's say, trying to be, a bit more open, this possibility of let's say, electric vehicles. Of course, not in the short term, but in the midterm and the long run as well. That China has been exporting more and more and more and more and more, both electric and hybrid vehicles, surpassing also, the production of those from Europe or from America. And Latin America is as well very open to this type of environmentally friendly vehicles or products. It's, of course, for that, before to develop the necessary infrastructure. So it's still, let's say, like a dream somehow. But why not? We have seen, as I said, this jump from a memorandum of understanding to have a port established, a mega port established. Right. So why not also to be open to those type of infrastructure investments in the future and see what happens after?
Exactly. Najim, picking up on what the professor said, of course, people are looking at, what's the next step between between China and Peru in terms of their bilateral relationship. We know China is the largest trading partner of the past 10 years, the largest export market. And then the professor mentioned about, say, electric vehicles, for example, production of vehicles in Peru and in the region. And people are also talking about the telecommunications, production, of course, the equipment and part of the infrastructure. What do you see in terms of, the prospect for the next step, a new future of the bilateral relationship here?
Okay, so, well, let's see. Right now, we already connected Peru with China, right? So we are deleting any type of geopolitical issue we could have had in the future with any other country we had to pass through to get to the Asian market. So that's for me is really important. It's gonna improve our connection. And also about the vehicles, let's see. I'm not an expert about the type of vehicles we have importing and exporting, right? But I'm pretty sure, I know that's a fact, that China has improved a lot in the quality of machinery in the textile area. So my corporation also have a fabric of textile, and we know this is gonna be a huge deal for this area of business in Peru. I'm pretty sure it's not only going to be in the textile machinery, also going to be, like the professor said, the expand of new type of machinery like the electrical vehicle. Also, this new tendency in the world of having green energy, sustainability of the world, it's improving. And China is one of the countries that's having the biggest impact about it. So also that's gonna make a really big improvement of Peru machinery usage, not only in the vehicle, but also in the textile and who knows, in every single aspect of the economy.
Yeah, John, earlier you mentioned about the Belt and Road Initiative. Of course, we know this Chancay Port is one of the flagship project of BRI, the initiative there. So obviously, we understand the importance of infrastructure, like a port, like a railway, like highways, of course, and even the new infrastructure, for example, charging facilities. If you want to develop this EV, this industry there. So I think the success of the project itself says a lot about this initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, how meaningful it is specifically to countries involved in this initiative.
Yeah, I remember hearing Peru's ambassador in China mentioning a number about the infrastructure gap in Peru in the amount of $150 billion. That's a huge number. So obviously, there are a lot of projects that can be potentially done. Particularly, it was mentioned to me that for basic things like internet access, broadband access. If I remember this correctly, I think about 30% of people in Peru still don't have broadband access. So right there, it's a big market. That's a big infrastructure need. So things like this, let alone when we talk about electric cars, electric grid infrastructure, charging networks, stuff like that. As a matter of fact, among about more than 12 agreements both sides signed, one after another in front of the president of China and the president of Peru. There's actually one agreement, I remember, that was signed by an automaker here in China. That's Chan automaker, Chan Automobile. So I'm guessing that at this stage and this day, Chan goes to Peru, it won't be making ICE cars, I guess, right? It got to be making some kind of a new alternative energy cars. So it might be very likely, in my view, might be some kind of electric car project, or at least maybe a hybrid electric car project. And that's a significant development, right?
Right.
So 34 million people. It's a fairly large market. And Chan Automobile is one of the leading companies, fast-growing companies here in China. So I think there are a lot of potential. I mean, at a very fundamental level, you look at the two economies between China and Peru. They're very complementary towards each other, right? I mean, we have a huge manufacturing industry, whereas in Peru, there's a very venerable mineral mining industry, with things like silver, copper, all these important minerals. So I think opportunities are indeed there. So I think the fact that this port is already completed is adding new meaning to the phrase that is meant to characterize a very long distance. In English, we have this phrase called "from China to Peru," meaning that this is a faraway land, a lot of distance. But today, we add new meaning to that. From Shanghai to Chancay, that's a characterization of a much shorter distance, right?
Yes.
So I think in that regard, I would really like to promote this phrase "from Shanghai to Chancay." That's a new
It's
phrase.
a new phrase, right? New
about,
catchphrase there. Yes. Let me turn to Ambassador Heine. Ambassador, of course, speaking at the APEC Informal Summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping talked about the idea of having more free trade. Building an open and interconnected paradigm for Asia-Pacific cooperation. He talked about, quote, tearing down the walls, basically preventing the flow of trade, investment, technology, and services. Obviously, the idea is very clear. He's all for free trade and multilateralism. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's extremely significant. And for countries in Latin America and in South America that depend so heavily on exports, that depend so heavily on placing our goods in the world market, obviously free trade is of the essence. The winds of protectionism that are blowing in the Northern Hemisphere are very ominous. And it seems to me that China's role in promoting free trade and in promoting multilateralism is extremely important. Let me here underscore something. In all of Latin America and the Caribbean, 22 countries have signed on to the Belt and Road Initiative. 8 are full members of the Asian Investment and Infrastructure Bank. And that, it seems to me, gives a very clear signal of how committed the countries in the region are to increased links with China, both in trade and also in investment and in financial cooperation. And on the issue of infrastructure, just beyond Peru, let me underscore the following. One of the big deficits that Latin America has is in the area of infrastructure, which is why the building of ports, of tunnels, of bridges, of railways is so significant. Latin America has been investing something like 2.5% of GDP in infrastructure, which is far lower than, say, Africa, the Middle East and Northern Africa, which invest about 4%, far less than East Asia does, that invests 8%. Only Sub-Saharan Africa invests less than Latin America in infrastructure. So in that sense, the building of Chancay and the opening of Chancay sends a very important signal to the rest of the world, in the sense that Latin America is building up its infrastructure, and I wish we'd see a lot more of that.
Ambassador, of course, see among the APEC members, upcoming G20 economies, I would say most of the economies are all for more free trade, green energies, fighting climate change. But of course, same time as you mentioned, we have a new government upcoming in Washington, which is pro-tariff, which is basically protectionism. I mean, are you confident that we can continue to push forward with globalization, say with Washington? Having a different idea?
Yes, well, the important thing, it seems to me, is to keep the impetus for free trade and for multilateralism, not to let it die. And here it seems to me that APEC performs a very important role. A flagship project of APEC for many years now has been something called the FTAAP, the Free Trade Area of the Asia Pacific. And it's interesting to note here that the viability study for the FTAAP was delivered in the previous time the APEC meeting was held in Lima in 2016. So that was a real milestone, but we are still very far from achieving that goal. And I would submit to you that it is very important, despite the headwinds that free trade is facing across the world, that APEC keep that commitment to free trade across the Pacific alive and pushing for it, because that is what we need. We cannot, give in to the pressures of protectionism that we are seeing today.
Well, of course, briefly, Najib, are you confident that, globalization, free trade will continue in 30 seconds?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it, please?
Yeah, are you confident we'll continue with globalization, with free trade?
Oh, yeah. So, well, definitely. This, of course, free trade is always gonna benefit countries, right? Let's say an example of Peru, China. The free trade started in 2010, and in only 4 years, China became the principal country to export from Peru. So, yeah, this free trade agreement, by facts and by historical view,
yes, that will continue. With that, we are coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.